Get rolling here. I'll call the meeting to order and
Goodness, she is in the hospital, so she's getting better, but she will not make it today, so we'll be sure to pray for her.
Oh, goodness.
goodness. Well, in that case, our prayer, Jonathan, you want me to do that?
I'll be happy
Yeah,
to.
please do.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together today to handle the business and the work of our city. We thank you for this food that's been provided. Pray that you bless us with health and nourishment of our bodies and us to your service. We pray for all the conversation and deliberations today. Father, would you grant us wisdom and discernment and unity as we review our city's founding document. Father, we just want to pray for Ms. Schoon and some of her health challenges. We're grateful that she's getting better, and we just pray for your continued hand to be upon her and restore her to full health so she can return and re-engage in this process. Father, we also just pray for anyone that's not able to be here today. Father, give them safety. And we do just remember our men and women in uniform who are at this very moment defending the right for us to do what we do here today. So we just pray for their safety. And we pray for all of our first responders that work each and every day to keep our community safe. Ask all this in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen. Do the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We'll do the roll call.
All right, Chairman Berg.
Here.
Mr. Banfi.
Yes.
Mr. Ferrera.
Here.
Vice Chairman, Mr. Henderson Jansenius.
Here.
And Ms. Schoon is out.
All right.
Chairman,
And then, the minutes were provided, the draft minutes were provided. Any suggested revisions, or if not, we'll do a motion to approve.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Before we get to audience participation, I bring up two things. Number one is just sort of the plan for today. We've had a town hall meeting, we've had a virtual meeting, we've got stuff on the agenda. Is there a desire to tackle certain things first? Would it be better to go easy to hard, hard to easy? Are there certain things that we may wanna spend more time on at the top of the meeting to get to the end? I just wanna kind of get a feel for what we want the rest of the day to look like. All right, we can stick with the agenda too.
Just follow the agenda,
Okay.
what comes what may,
Okay.
yeah.
Alright, okay. And then I'll let her, one more thing. If we're ever doing a public event, and I guess the natural thing is that I've noticed when we're at these things as the chair, they tend to talk to me first. If I'm ever saying something that you feel like does not represent the board, I try to be mindful of this is Brandon, this is the board. Please either interrupt me or call me afterwards saying like, you're not accurately representing what we're saying. And so I'm really trying to be very mindful, like when we debate things, because I think almost everything that we've debated, there's legitimate reasons on both sides. I try my best to articulate both of those, but for real, like don't feel like, hey, if Brandon's saying something that doesn't reflect my feelings or the board's feelings, like please say something, okay? Cool, all right, then audience participation. Audience?
There's no one.
Jonathan?
Sorry, no one online.
Okay.
I think they just fully trust you and the board, sir, and what we're doing, so. He's trying to. Yeah, not gonna be able to.
Jonathan, do you have anything?
Yes, sir.
I will say that the comments are fairly open, and so as we get into something, if there's anything that you wanna say, we'll absolutely find an opportunity for you to add into it, so by all means, okay? Cool. Staff.
I have to remember there's two Jonathans in here now, so.
John, what's your last name again?
Walker.
Walker, okay, cool, then I'll just, Mr. Walker, that works. All right, how about our staff reports?
So I provided a copy at the request, shortly before you got here, sir, just some of the salary research that I provided at the last meeting. I'm not sure if it was in the packet, but just to make sure that was something that kind of came up at the end of the virtual workshop we had earlier this week. And then just for purposes of kind of the conversation, I think there was some, and it kind of came up, but I did talk to a couple of the commissioners. I just want to provide clarity that our agendas right now are finalized a week out, and we publish them on Wednesday before the Tuesday of every election, not every election, of every meeting. And so they are out there, and once it's published on the Wednesday, it goes live. Any modifications to it at that point does require a vote of the board. Nobody can just pull it off at that point, because it's a fully baked at that point agenda. So
So you're talking the commission agendas or ours?
the commission agendas, I don't know when we publish these, they're probably about a week out as
I
well.
do,
Yeah, that's just pretty much become common
I think
practice.
I publish
We-
them on Friday, we have a meeting on Thursday.
Yeah,
I
so we
publish
all,
it on
about
Friday.
7 days in advance, all the agendas are made
Okay.
live. In the past, we did do it on a Friday. We publish them on Friday, we kind of finish it up internally at the city on Thursday, and then it would go live on Friday. But probably about not quite a year ago, a little less than a year ago, we moved it, we started publishing them a week out, so, yeah.
Is that codified anywhere? Or is it just,
Uh,
that's just practice?
It's it's
The
driven by state law, there's a minimum, which I believe is 48 hours prior to the meeting, so we were all, because you had, some of that was the weekend, practice was Friday, and then we moved it back. So the answer is, the exact timeline to do it a week out is not codified in city, it's just a practice, not a policy. But state law does require, there's a minimum with state law, yes, sir. Okay.
Hold on, this
I'm
is
not
an
sure.
important distinction.
Yeah.
The fact that the meeting will occur gets noticed 48 hours in advance. What the agenda is and any sort of limiting factor is not part of the statute, it's not part of the charter or anything like
I
that.
don't think it is.
Yeah,
Now, for the
correct.
CRA,
The
it's
CRA
special
it is,
district, it's different. For the CRA, it specifies that an agenda has to be posted. Now, it doesn't say,
Why are we talking about the CRA?
I'm just saying that that's different.
Yeah.
They're not
Understand.
aligned.
Huh?
They're not aligned.
Yeah, well, we're not doing the charter for the CRA. I don't understand what's the point we're trying to make here?
I think there was thought that I think potentially the thought was that the agendas were like not published, that there was like a lot of flexibility, and there's really not. Once it's published, it's set. So once
It's
we.
not. That's not true, Jonathan. That once the agenda is set, there's nothing there's nothing legally that limits the city commission from bringing up anything that they desire at the
Oh,
meeting.
if they vote on it, correct, but we can't just, like, staff can't just add something to the agenda once it's published. That's not from a staff perspective.
There are advertising requirements
Yeah.
for planning and land use and zoning, and so they, like if a commissioner wanted to take action, if it's not on the agenda, they'd have to direct staff to put it on the following agenda and meet all appropriate advertising requirements.
So when it comes to those, and even if, so let's say like, oh, we needed to add X, Y, or Z, staff can't do that unless requested at the beginning of the meeting and the commission votes to do so. So, so yeah, so I just wanted to provide
So
clarity
on
about
the,
those.
just real quick, on the compensation thing, didn't we have a thing that said what the compensation is? What here says like where it is, but I thought we had a thing before that said what it is. Didn't you have one that said this is they're tied to the commission, they get commission minus 50% or something like
No,
that?
those are certain ideas. So right now, our salaries are commissioners are paid at the lowest employee that we have, which is a grade 4 position.
Am I misremembering something, guys? I thought you
I
had a
think we-
sheet that said,
I did. I have a sheet that talks about comparing it to other cities, and y'all
Yeah.
requested that.
It's just-
So-
is it in here?
Yeah, I printed and handed out today. It was provided last time, but a
I know.
couple of people were asking for it
It's not
earlier, and I just
stapled in,
wanted
it's
to.
not, it was just laid out.
Oh, my bad, hold on, sorry, okay, my bad, there's other things here too. Charter,
I set one right there.
I believe so.
Here's one.
Yeah, this was super helpful.
Yeah, so our commissioners are paid for, they're the lowest position that we currently have staff, which is a grade 4, and then the mayor gets an extra $1,800. The board had asked for, like, how do other cities do it? And so we provided this, and I don't know that we got into a real detailed conversation, but right before you got here, it was asked if we could just print this out again, a couple of folks, so I just printed it out and just passed that out, compared to about 25 other cities around the state, so. Awesome.
What else, Jonathan?
That's it for me. I don't know if Ms. Waldron has anything.
I don't.
So a couple of things that we had left over from the meeting minutes, and this was either Nevin or I don't know if Mike, you've got something for it, was looking at the model charter and perhaps giving some ideas as to things that don't exist in our charter that other charters include that we should give consideration to.
Well, since Mr. Zimmerman is not here, I wanted to request that we could wait until he's here for that.
Okay, cool. Y'all were gonna look at the proposed revisions to Article 17 about utilities. make sure we weren't having some unintended consequences there.
I do not have any unintended consequences from that. Again, Mr. Zimmerman can weigh in on that too.
Cool. Well, let's move forward with our suggestions, and when we have the next meeting,
Yeah.
if there's something that the spirit of what we wanted to do, I think was very clear. But, and then there was gonna be suggested language on the 10-year review of the charter.
And we have some suggested language in the latest update to
Okay,
the
great.
charter that was provided. It's in,
Is there
it was in
a
Article,
page 35?
correct. And it replaces the planning board Division 2 section in its entirety. Would you like me to read that or? Section 260 on the last page.
Page 35.
Okay. All right, let's get to that when we get to the actual, like, new business substance. And then, I just pulled from my notes and then what was in the meeting minutes. Proposed language on moving the kind of administrative functions of the clerk, the record keeping things under the city manager.
Yes, let me see the page here. So, under the clerk collector's Article 13, and so the language involving the city clerk has all been deleted. And then if you go under city manager, which is Article 7, page 21. I don't have a number yet for the section, but I added it at the end under duties of clerk. And I simply moved the language from what was currently under the city clerk collectors article to here, and I didn't make any other than maybe slight edits to make the language fit. It's essentially the same.
And then the last two things, and these kind of work together, just discussion on merchant fee language and just finance in general.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
The other two issues were just discussion of the merchant fees, like taxation, and whether or not we should even fool with touching that for fear of jeopardizing the ability to do that, and then just finance in general.
You're correct, that, but I would want Mr. Zimmerman to
I'll
address that.
speak for him on the merchant fee, don't touch it.
Fair enough, that's fine.
Don't touch
I
it.
appreciate the clarity.
Right, but then is that only don't touch section 148 and the other ones can all come out, or is that don't touch Article 15?
No, we're just talking about 148.
So just section 148 needs to stay in there, right? Is that,
Yes.
okay.
Is it stays in there period or stays in there unless it's all preempted?
Well, that isn't going to be preempted. The merchant tax and all
No, no.
that is special.
I'm saying to just the whole section or the whole article.
That was my understanding, that when we present the final draft, that all this stuff that has editor's note, that a statute or something else is
Oh, I'm
taken care of,
sorry.
gets thrown out of the charter. We don't need to do
Yeah, we don't
that.
need, if it's preempted, I'm sorry, I didn't understand
Sorry.
what you were saying, yeah.
Okay.
Ron understood.
But we.
Yeah, we don't need to keep that.
Don't worry, they all come in.
Well, I mean, if there's no use in it being here, so.
Our working document has a bunch of those still in it.
I know that, and that, yeah, they're all still here, so I don't know how you present that to the general public to vote on.
Mr. Chairman, that was gonna be my question is, does the general public have to vote on it since it's duplicative? I mean, that's like, if you're just doing cleanup from preemption.
So, one is kind of more of a legal question, the best way to tee it up. probably getting out over my skis here, but Mike, tell me differently. So what I would think would be that my language is you basically have what's called an amended and restated document. That the red lines become so confusing that it's like just this is the whole new thing. We can do it that way and then remove all the obsolete provisions, or you can have a red line version just as long as it doesn't confuse people. We can do it either way.
Yeah, and I was even thinking to the ballot language, like this would just be, and removing all articles that conflict with state statute.
Oh, I mean, what actually goes on? I haven't even contemplated that, or that's
Yeah, I
what you
think
need to do.
the issue you're speaking to, Brandon, really is more of a, what I'll call marketing. Kind of, yeah, right. You wanna be careful how you call it. I don't think you'd wanna say this is a new charter.
Right.
You do, but I think if you say amended and restated or something along those lines from a marketing
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah.
That's where you.
It's not lost on me that the number of people that are gonna read this word for word is probably very low. But for the person that does read it, you want them to actually be able to read it and understand it. And there does come a time when there's so many red lines and so many revisions that it's just very hard to follow. In that case, you just say, listen, it's a whole new document, read it word for word. There's a lot of other times where it's like, no, the red line actually makes it easier to follow. It's just, we gotta see what it looks like at the end of it.
Well, what I've seen in other referendums is a restating of what's being done in a more understandable language. There'll be a list of the changes that are being made, but not the document itself for people to review, but so for example, all of these superseded sections that have been superseded by state law, you can simply state, remove language that has been superseded by state law.
Yeah, makes sense.
Make it very simple, and then that really clears out a lot of what's in here that's now archaic.
Yeah, I mean, not to punt on this, but I think this is a commission and a Panama City legal question, how this gets put on the ballot.
That out with the
Yeah,
commission.
Because we're gonna be limited to the number of words we can put on the ballot anyway, so it's
I've never
gonna
done,
be,
I've never
it's gonna
done
be
that
an
before.
art, to be able to
I think
capture all this.
what the SOE's office said basically is it would be short and sweet, and then they would provide, like, there'd be a binder, I think, at each precinct that had
Okay.
literally the whole thing out, and then they would publish it.
I'm sure you can put it online and have
Yeah,
links. You
all
can
of that
have
in
links and all
advance, yes,
that.
The ballot will not be 37 pages.
All right, anything else we're looking for from staff that I'm overlooking?
We got a heavy load in front of us today.
Let's go. Okay, well then the next thing is mayor commissioner compensation. And just to focus the discussion, there's gonna be, I think, two layers to this. Number one is, does it even go in the charter? Because if it doesn't go in the charter, then we can stop chatting about it. But if we think it does, which specifically Commissioner Street has asked us to consider that, I haven't really heard any other commissioner that seems a proponent or opponent to it. He just seems to be the one. And so I guess first is, do we think it needs to go in the charter? And if it does, then how do we define it? Brandon?
Certainly you have some research on that.
Yeah, lots of it. I'm out of point for this one. I would defer this to the city manager since he has to budget for it.
Well, I mean, Josh was very clear that it wasn't so much about what the compensation was, he just wants to take the decision out of the commission's hands.
Yeah.
And fix it to something.
But there would still be a vote by the commission to agree to their salary or something. I mean, that's been my experience.
It is preset.
There may be a scale, like the League of Cities or whatever may have a formula to use, but the commission would still have to vote. I don't think you're going to get away from the commission voting, whether it's in the budget or whatever, what their salaries are. I don't think you'll get away from that ever.
They do have to approve the budget, which it's budgeted for there, but
And where their salaries are.
I mean, it's tied to something fixed today. It's the current pay scale and what our lowest current.
But that's not in the charter.
But they could change it. I think
That's
by
fine.
ordinance, they could
Yes.
change it.
Yeah, they could change it.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, Ron. I mean, when I'm looking at all these seem to be formulaic. Either they're
Yeah.
same as the county commissioners, or they're a set fixed number, or they're 75% of the county commissioners. plus the mayor gets an extra $1,200 and,
But I would probably guess that the majority, if not all of these, are not in the charter.
I
Right,
think
so
ours
we have
is
that
by
sheet too.
ordinance. Ours is currently by ordinance. It
Yeah,
spells the formula out by ordinance currently.
And that, I mean, I can understand Commissioner Street's point, because, you know, if it's by ordinance, it's easier to change, but if it's by charter, they're locked in and makes it a lot more difficult to address. But politically, it's very difficult to address via ordinance anyway.
yeah, Ron, I mean, in here after the language I had from a few meetings ago, kind of mixes it up. McLenny, wherever that is, Charter, Inverness Charter, Green Cove Springs Charter, Pensacola Ordinance, Apalachicola Ordinance, Tallahassee Charter, I mean, it kind of varies. St. Joe Ordinance.
See, I don't think it should be in the charter, but I also see the wisdom in putting it in, so it's not a hill to die on. I think, yeah, it's an uncomfortable political situation, but they don't get to dodge that uncomfortable political decision. I think if they really wanted to raise their pay rate, they would have to go convince the public that they deserve a pay raise. That's kind of my view of it. You don't get to avoid that uncomfortable political decision as a
When was the last time it was
commissioner
changed?
slash mayor.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think one of the advantages to the formulaic approach, which is what the state does for our county officials, is because it's really tied to your population. And I'll say, since I'm not an elected official, I never have been, but it is true, the bigger your city or county gets, the more work and the harder it is. And I know it's in vogue to attack elected officials at all levels, but, you know, I've seen a lot of folks at the national and local level, and, you know, it's a lot of hard work, and it's very thankless a lot of times. And so, not that I think folks need to get rich off of it, but fairly compensating someone for their labor, I believe is an American and a Western value. So, in principle, so I don't know. I think similar to how some of the cities have done it, where they kind of make it a percentage of the county. I think, you know, and putting in the charter could potentially tie it basically to the formula the legislature sets, which is almost always going to be driven by the population of that county, and then you reduce it by a percentage. Whether this board recommends 75% for the mayor and then 75% of that for the commissioners, or some other percentage, I think that's appropriate, and I think it does, in my opinion, maybe more fairly compensate future. And what you could do is, I would defer to legal on this, but maybe it goes into effect, and then you're like, it's in effect in 4 years or something, you know, so that whatever board votes on it now, it's 4 years out. I know that's how other entities have done it in the past, where it's not effective immediately, it's effective in like maybe 2 cycles later, so that no one can say they're trying to benefit it for themselves right now. I don't know if you can do that in a charter.
But that suggests leaving it in the ordinance, though. The method you're talking about, not putting in the.
Yeah, there's so many
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
discussions when it comes to the compensation of them. Like, do you want to compensate them really, really well, enough to the point where they can be a full-time job and then they can focus all their attention? Or do you want to pay them so much that it becomes, you have unqualified people that see it as a massive pay raise? Like, I see this on the Judicial Nominating Commission.
Oh, yeah.
That you have this massive disparity, which judges make pretty good money, but you get a lot of people that it's a huge pay increase, and then you have another group of people you would want them to be judges that don't want to take the pay decrease. So that's a whole other thing.
It is.
I think the more fundamental question right now is this a charter decision or an ordinance decision?
The last time that was, the ordinance for compensation was addressed by the city commission was in 2004. So it's been a long time since they've looked at it, I think, because of it is a pretty hot topic in order to say we're gonna vote to give ourselves a pay increase.
And I think that was when they might have put the monthly automobile allowance of $500.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that, but that's all spelled out in the.
So for the board, I mean, again, all of this stuff goes to the commission and they're gonna debate it. They can put it in there and then they can take it out. We can leave it out and they put it back in. And so, not to belabor this point, but I guess unless there's I feel like, again, I'm trying to speak for the board, there's a general side of erring towards, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, let's leave it alone. So if there's nobody here who's on this board and the only person that's championing this is Josh, no offense to Josh, then we can maintain the status quo, and then Josh, if you wanna take it up at the commission level, then advocate for it there. So I guess at this point, not to, again, is there even a motion to revise or discuss it any further or anything like that? Otherwise, we'll move on.
I do have a question though. I do believe, and the attorneys can speak to this, but I do believe all the county officials, they don't really get a say in it. It's not ordinance, it's state law.
That's set by.
So I think that's why some cities look at it and they're like, hey, we can't really, like, state law doesn't directly impact us, but we can by, if you were to put it in the charter, knowing that the county doesn't get to like move theirs up and down, it's all set by the legislature and it's formula driven based on population, then you kind of have a secondary effect to that for our city officials too, where it's impacted indirectly by the legislature. No elected official in the future in Panama City or Bay County is gonna be moving it up and down. And it's driven by something that is more objective, and that's the population of the area in which you live. Just a thought. So I think my point is that the county officials don't get to really pick theirs because they're locked in by a higher, I guess, power of the legislature.
Is that set by population or how?
It's different population.
I like the standard. I think as we grow, there has to be a standard and close the gap on it, close the other side of it, because it was set by ordinance in 2004. We were a different city in 2004, right? We're gonna be a different city in 2034 when the next charter takes over, charter review board takes over. I think setting the standard so that it's scalable, it impacts the budget too, right? As a percentage of overall revenue or whatever that looks like it helps drive the narrative for it's not up for debate. Like it's literally a charter item, but it's gotta stay fair. I like the fair compensation portion of it. I think it shouldn't be a conversation that a commission brings up, because then everybody's gonna go straight towards it. But if it's a scalable approach, I don't know what that would look like. If it's a percentage, the state seemed to, when they did it for the county, you become a problem eliminator, not a problem solver. You eliminate the need for it ever being a problem again because the standard's so clear. Instead of 10 years from now, the problem's coming back to the table, 10 years, the problem's coming back, and we just solve it every time.
Well, ours is based on the base compensation of our starting pay rate for our lowest paid full-time employees. So that changes as the market changes too, with COLAs and CPI, we adjust that. So that's kind of covered for that. And then it also allows for each member of the commission to receive any bonus, incentive, or raise, which is granted uniformly to general employees of the city. So that's in there. So if we apply the 2% COLA to all employees, then we would also raise our base 2% so that to kind of keep up with that.
So if I can kind of read between the lines of what JP and Brandon are saying, your point is it needs to be formulaic, let's set it to something, let's put in the charter. JP's point, I'm gonna go on a limb here, it probably is, I agree with everything you're saying, it should be fixed, except for that's a discussion the commissioners should have on their own via ordinance in front of the public.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Again, I understand the point, but I think that if it's a change that needs to happen, I think that's a political decision that needs to occur there, rather than us tacking it onto the back of a charter.
Is it a political decision or is it a fiscal decision?
I think that's a political decision for them to go argue to the public who elected them that they deserve more or less or whatever it is that they wanna do. But I think the people who elected them have the say on that. Cause you're right, like because it's a hot button issue,
Yep.
there's a reason that's a hot button issue.
I'm an advocate for removing the subjectivity of what is more or what is less. And it's clear and standardized. That way it's not open for questioning. Like a commissioner may think he's worth $100,000 a year, but right now they're worth $35,000 a year, $33,000 a year, right? Like there's a big gap between that, and worth is subjective. So like if we could objectify it and it's scalable for the next 10 years between now and the next charter review, like how do we make it fair but still clear? And I think that's what Josh is asking for.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that the other thing too is for us to tie future commissions' hands too much. I'd rather give them the flexibility to figure out what those problems are 10 years from now. Cause I do think if the whole thing, city grows and all of a sudden the commission pay budget is growing to the point where, I don't know what's gonna, we don't know what the problems are 10 years from now.
But what I'm hearing, what you're saying is, let's not make it a political decision, let's fix it. When I say not fix it, that it's an error, but make it static, put it in the charter. What you're saying is, it is a political decision, it's inherently political, and if they want something different, they need to be able to answer to the citizens and not rely on what's in the charter.
That's,
Yeah, I don't have an answer, but I understand.
yeah, that's, yeah, but I also see the wisdom in putting it in there,
for
taking it
sure.
out of their hands, because the other side here is that there could be a commission theoretically that decides all of a sudden, we're all gonna get together and we're all gonna set our pay rate at whatever the president of the United States paid. And that's what we're gonna use as our standard. That's, unlikely, but awesome.
Yeah.
You have any-
I said I wasn't gonna talk
Come
today,
on,
remember?
you brought notes. You're ready to go.
Ron, the school board members' compensation, is that fixed?
Yes, it's by population, now, I've
Okay.
been on the board a long time, but
That's by
it's
statute?
it's by statute, by
Same
population, so
formula.
it's very similar.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised the League of Cities doesn't have something like that for population based.
They really don't, because your city, again, cities are done by their respective charters, cities, towns, and villages. Your county officials, which includes county commission, school board, and your 6 constitutional officers in the state of Florida, it's formula driven by the legislature.
Because they're all constitutional officers.
Yes, so, and I did not include school board on here, but like, for example, Bay County Commissioners are at 87.6. I wanna say the school board members are just shy of 50. It's like 48 something. And and then the constitutional officers are a little bit different based on the position, but it is also affected again by the compensation. So one of those guys or gals is gonna make less, say, in Franklin County than they would in Bay, more so in Leon, and certainly like in Broward and Brevard and Miami-Dade.
I mean, out of curiosity, if we use the county formula, what would the effect be on the commission salary?
So if you did the 75%, like for example, it's that's Volusia County in Daytona Beach. So I have those numbers right here. So it'd be basically like around 66 for the mayor and 49.5 for the commissioners. So our commissioners would be more in line with the school board in Bay County, and then the mayor would be kind of in between that and kind of the county commissioners. So did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yep. So.
I don't know what, Devin always accuses me of speaking a lot more than he does, so forgive me if I'm interjecting
Everybody
myself too
speaks
much,
more
but
than Devin does.
That's true. The ordinance has worked for 22 years. So if you were looking for a compromise of what to set, then perhaps you take the formula of the ordinance as it is now. If you're looking to charter, put it in the charter. Put that in the charter as perhaps your floor, right? This is the minimum that it can be. But the commissioners, if they decide they're worth $66,000 a year, could change it by ordinance. If you just set the basic number to be what the ordinance says it is now. And that ordinance allows for increases so that it increases with the COLA increases or whatever else, so that you're not stuck with a set number of. My first career was in politics in Atlanta, and my Fulton County Commissioner made $14,000 a year, and that was set by they have the charter sort of system there. They did a lot more than I made 4 times more than my commissioner made. So I would say that if you build it in, you want to build in something that at least allows it to escalate on some sort of a model, and apparently the ordinance has worked pretty good for a while.
Yeah, I think that idea is great in philosophy, probably not in practicality. If we create the standard, that will be the standard. There won't be any adjustments to it in life.
Probably not, because they're not going to want to face the
The public,
Political.
the
Yeah,
political
and
side.
I don't know how wise our current policy is right now, but that's the.
I do have a quick question. So, I mean, the policy right now it is scalable, I just don't, I mean, I hear that word being thrown around that it's not, but so they're subject to both the cost of living adjustments and our step increases. So if they're eligible for both in a year, they could be, if it's a 2% COLA and a 3% step, that's a 5% pay increase. So their pay does increase over time, But it's not, it's certainly, their base pay is as low as it gets, and then they have to continue to serve to earn more. So it does scale, and maybe it just doesn't scale at the rate at which.
Yeah, the gap between.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a
State school board
methodology.
is.
Well, and
I agree with you on that.
I mean, I think the scalable issue is the population increase.
Right.
Cause it could be that 10 years from now, if our population has doubled, I doubt that inflation is gonna make it to where that person is getting it double. I think that's the scalable issue, is the population, theoretically, amount of work.
So if you tie it to the county commission, theirs is based on population.
Right, that's
For the school board, and it's, okay. I
But
got you.
see, their budget's also based on population, ours necessarily, just because our population doubles doesn't mean our revenue doubles.
Yeah, so the more and more I think about it, I kind of lean with what Brandon's saying is I think it becomes unnecessarily political. I think there's always a political component to it, but it just, to have the commission start discussing their own compensation, just even addressing the topic just becomes kind of a third rail, so therefore it's never gonna get touched, and so
Nuclear.
it's, yeah. Yeah, and I also think that like, what are they making now, 40, 39?
No,
33.
33,
Yeah,
okay.
it's, yeah, a little, under
Just-
40.
You're not going to get a meaningful difference in what the candidate is, whether it's 33 or 40 or 45 or 50. I mean, if you went to 100, I'm sure it might take some people off the fence, or 150, but it's like, just nobody's thinking, well, I would run if it was 40, but I'm not gonna run if it's 30. That's just not a thing. And so, the other thing and I just didn't know about the school board, but it's also like, well, if it works for the county, and it works for the school board, and it works for all these other things, there's probably some logical reasons why it's out of their hands. And then what we end up tying it to, I wrote two things. Number one is, you were talking about population growth, which that's a pretty reasonable proxy for burden. So for Bay County, it's a little weird because there is a very real chance that Bay County could grow by 20, 30, 50%, whatever, just due to the landlocked nature of Panama City. I mean, maybe it grows at the same rate. There's a lot of growth at the beach. There's a lot of growth up 79. There's a lot of growth up 231 that I guess would be Panama City. It's just, I don't know if that's I'm not saying it's a bad proxy. I just don't know if that's the perfect proxy.
Right.
Whereas I feel like tying it to some staff compensation does tie to an inflationary environment a little bit closer. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just kind of, that's where my head's at. So I do like the idea of, if it's good for all these other things, meaning it's static and it's fixed and it's in some sort of governing document, statute, whatever, it makes sense for the city as well. I think it removes an unnecessary conversation from the commission's hands. And then I'm kind of 51-49. I think tying it to staff compensation's a better proxy than population, just the nature of how Panama City is. But that's where I'm at. So now what?
Are we gonna make a decision or are we
Yeah.
still discussing?
Well, we got
Well, let's try
got
this.
two. You got, yeah.
I make a
you got one
motion, I make a motion that the compensation does not appear in the charter.
Is there a second?
left. I second.
You want to debate that? Or we can-
I'm just trying to get us off the fence.
I think we're gonna end up at, well,
Yeah.
Stalemate?
the thing, it's where,
Today.
the thing is where you are, that's what I'm taking from your motion that you don't think it should be in there.
I do not.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we may need Cecile here.
Yeah.
Cause I'm gonna, I mean, not a hill I'm gonna die on, but.
Right, exactly.
I don't think it's broken, that's my thing. It's set, it's in statute, it's in policy, it's fixed. I think it handles your problem, it is fixed. It is a measurable formula, it's there,
Be an ordinance.
Yeah. It's there already.
It's not even a charter item.
Yeah, but that,
And if we're trying to fix, I mean, and he's the guy that appointed me, if we're trying to fix the uncomfortableness of a commissioner having to vote for his salary, I don't think that's in our lane to even do.
I don't have a strong argument against that. I really don't.
and again, I'm not a fan of what they're getting paid. I agree with that, I sympathize with them, I just think
Yes.
that's the,
I mean, and
and I say that as someone who's
also in the back of my
sitting on
mind
state
is,
statute, and
I
I
don't-
have to deal
you
with that
know,
every year.
I ran as a public servant, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I don't ever want the city commission spot to be a full-time job. That's what these folks are.
Yeah.
Because if you gave me $100,000 to be a full-time commissioner, I'm gonna be in their business all day long. You would too, you would too, you would too. That's not the job of commissioner. So I'm always gonna be settling on the lower maybe not this low, but on the lower end of the spectrum. It should not be a full-time job, not in Panama City.
Well, it sounds like at this point, great discussion. I understand both sides of it very, very well, but there's not gonna be enough votes to change the status quo, right?
Yeah.
At least not today, and we'll see what Cecile wants to do, but. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We have a motion, so we need to vote, sir.
Oh, fair, okay,
Right.
then, yeah, there was a motion in a second. Okay, so, all in favor of not including the language in the charter? Just say aye.
Aye.
All in favor of it, or anybody opposed to the motion of it not being in the charter, say aye. Aye. So we're tied. Motion fails.
Okay.
Unless Brandon wants to make the motion on the other side of it. Just to prove it.
I think we table.
No, so
The
the
motion
motion
fails.
fails.
The motion fails, yes.
That was
Because it was
2-2.
a tie, yeah, there's no majority.
Fair enough. Then, where's my?
We'll put it on the next agenda.
Down the road.
Yeah, we're revisiting this next time.
Mr. Chairman, you'd like this on the next agenda then, sir?
If y'all don't mind, yes, just, I mean,
Yeah,
if we had all 5 people here, which I guess we wouldn't have a tie at that point, but yeah, we need to see what our
We'll-
fifth
we'll
member
do
wants to say. Public utility approval, so we've got section, what was that, 17? Or am I Roman numeral?
It was 17. Efficient governmental work. Bless you. I think that was the legal team. I don't, yes, nothing needs to be in there, so. Yes, page 30. Ooh, lots of yellow.
Stop it.
Well, that was kind of like, sorry, go ahead. That was kind of my question before about we're voting to remove all these things. We need to do that for everything. That was kind of my question earlier about if we're gonna do a blanket, remove all that. I guess we need to do a vote to get this approved.
I suppose we could do it either way, we could
Yeah.
do it article by article, we could have at some point, whether it's today or at the end, a motion to
Yeah.
remove all the other obsolete provisions. At this point, if you don't mind, let's just stay with 17. And my recollection is correct, the idea was to allow the city to do whatever it's legally entitled to do under the statutes with no other conditions or restrictions, and just as long as legal counsel doesn't say we're doing something unintended by removing the entire provision, we'd like to move forward with just getting rid of it.
It's all preempted anyway.
And at the decision at the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting, was to add the language under Article 3 powers to essentially replace removal of public utilities. It would be above, I added it above section 49, Article 3 powers. And the language is, the city of Panama City located in Dade County shall have all government, corporate and proprietary powers to enable it to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions, and render municipal services, and may exercise any power for municipal purposes except when expressly prohibited by law. My recollection is this was, you were provided several different kinds of options, and this was the one that was in the charter from Pensacola, and it basically allows the broadest, makes it more broad, instead of giving a enumerated list of things like under public utilities, this allows the city to have its most broadest use of its powers.
And I know I'm going a little off field, but section 20, what actual power does that have, and is that the same thing? I keep coming back to that section 20 that says, you know, all powers except herein is otherwise provided by this charter or hereby vested in the city commission. Does that kind of do the same thing? Is that different?
It's redundant.
So it may have been the appropriate place to add anything would would have been under section 20.
So I think, yeah, cause
I
I
don't think you need
think,
to
I think section 20 is what, yeah.
Good catch. I make a motion to approve the removal of Article 17.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, there you go.
Do I interpret that as the language that was added under Article 3 powers, therefore is redundant and not needed?
So, no,
And just leave it as section 20?
well, I don't think we're there exactly yet. Right now, it's just get rid of 17. But I was about to ask the question of, is there one, I mean, JP, like, really astute point here. Is there a reason why we should effectively combine the proposed language with the Article 20 language and enumerate some of the things that are in the proposed language and include that in 20? Or is it just belt and suspenders and not needed?
2, should it be moved out of the commissioner category and underneath of Article 3 powers?
Right, that's
Or be defined as a commission power.
I recommend you leave 20 as is. I don't think you need the new language.
So just from a procedural standpoint, this is not a knock, but we didn't ask for this language, right? But basically I'm saying we don't need to vote to not have the language because we didn't ask for it in the first place.
My recollection is that you did vote to use this additional language, but you're going to vote again at the end of this entire procedure. So
Unless the board thinks there's a procedural issue, let's just not use the language that's proposed and whatever the next working version is, let's leave that out.
Just strike that.
Yeah, okay. Alright, then. Article 20, boards and commissioners, removal of the planning board language, suggested language regarding charter review board and advisory boards. Charter language is on the very last page there.
I think the city commission had asked us to include the language about that they can do it more often if they wanted to, even though it's redundant. I think that was one of the things the commission had asked us for. Any thoughts there?
I agree. Janice, I mentioned that, Janice Lucas.
Yeah.
About the language being reflective of not just we will do it every 10 years, but at minimal,
Yeah.
once every 10 years.
I don't know what that language needs to be, if they can call it at any time or.
So to the legal team in here, everybody with me, does that say, if I was reading this, and I said, let's have a charter review, oh no, you can't, it just says once every 10 years.
I think that's the fear.
Yes. Because it has that flavor to me
Yeah.
in it, if somebody really wanted to stand their ground, oh no,
Mhm.
we have to do it 10 years, that's all you get.
Yeah.
I don't know if it says that or not, but so
I
if
think-
we
I think-
clarify it, that
yeah,
takes
we
that
just
out of
need
the mix entirely.
I think you could go either way from a scrivener's perspective. You could either add in on the first sentence where it says, by resolution of the city commission, no less than every 10 years, and that covers it, or you could just add a catch-all sentence at the end, and by the way, they can also do it whenever they want.
Right.
I'd say no less than every 10 years is more the standard.
Whatever the legal grounds is, you
Yeah.
guys.
Or we can come up with whatever we want,
Yeah.
that's a great thing.
The policy being that you want it to be flexible. Gotta happen every 10 years, but
Yeah, at least
if
they're,
they wanna do it
call
every
it
3, they
tomorrow,
can do it every 3.
yeah.
and it seems like there might be appetite from that after talking to the commissioners.
Yes, I believe there will be.
There probably might be.
So then is there a motion to approve the language with the revision that says this charter shall be reviewed by a board appointed by resolution of the city commission no less than every 10 years, and then the rest of the language will stay the same?
Yes, I moved to what Chairman Berg just said. I wasn't gonna try to repeat that.
Any other discussion? I just do this almost daily. All right, any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Making good headway. City clerk collector and,
Now we come to writing call.
well, I do think there was the language that was suggested about moving the defined clerk function under city manager. And while I have not done a compare, it was told to us that they just basically moved that language. The identical responsibilities is just now under the city manager. Yeah, look, I have it. What page was that on?
The 21. Thank you, sir.
I have one thought, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. After our workshop, I believe the flavor in the room was to leave this alone,
I would concur.
even though that's not my stance. But I think it'd be hard to sell to the voters. It might be a one item to send to the voters one day. But I don't think we could explain it to the voters, and I would hate for all the other work we've done to get, even with the commission, a no vote cancels the whole shebang, you know? Other than moving the clerk, now that's part of it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, move the clerk out.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Move the
I'll say,
clerk.
I recall the
Yeah,
administrative
but
function.
the CFO
Okay.
versus collector,
That's my recollection.
leave that
as well.
part alone.
Yes.
That was my
That's what I
Yeah,
was concurring
yeah.
with. The financial oversight remaining separate did seem to be.
It would be a
the
commission
sense of
officer, it would
commission.
remain a commission officer.
Let's do this in two steps. Is there any motion or discussion or on the highlighted language here on 21 to move the clerk to the manager? And we want to discuss this, just because one thing I'm thinking of is, do we need to change that title? That is what a clerk does, right?
I'm sorry, on the.
It's pretty common.
Using the city clerk one, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
right.
She's,
Should
we're doing it
attend
right now.
all
Yeah.
meetings.
You mean the title city clerk?
Yeah.
Change the title of the city clerk to something different?
Right now, the city clerk does all the things that a clerk would traditionally do, plus they have a bunch of financial functions that a clerk, yeah. Well, if we call this a city clerk and then we have a charter officer that says city clerk that does it just becomes very confusing. So I just didn't know if we need to call this role something different, or if we leave the substance of what was the clerk the same, but we change the title. I'm just saying, we can't have two clerks.
I think that
If you follow the county commission standard, Mr. Kinsall sits there at the county commission as the clerk. But he also has constitutional duties as the comptroller too of the county commission, the board of county commissioners, right? So I think if you're the nomenclature you're looking for is probably gonna be clerk is the taking the minutes,
agendas,
agendas,
notices,
taking
public
care of
records.
the order of the commission, so to speak, or the order of the commission, so to speak. And then comptroller is a different hat, take that off. Now I'm counting beans and making sure that only so many beans go out. So I think clerk is the appropriate, secretary maybe the other,
In the charters to add to that,
Yeah.
in the charters that I've seen, whether or not it falls under a separate charter officer position or under the city manager, and I see it 50-50 both ways, it still seems to be called the city clerk.
So the function of a clerk is all those things Mike said. I would add it, because a large portion of that position is public records. And we have a whole position dedicated to just dealing with public records.
I think to your point, Mr. Chairman, to answer it, I think it could remain city clerk, but yes, you would need to come up with another title for the financial aspect that provides
Yeah,
more weight to it.
Yeah, I mean,
Either whether that's comptroller or CFO, but that sets it apart and it underscores the financial oversight that is by that position. But putting city clerk, because right now we don't have a city clerk. We have a city clerk dash treasurer. It's actual clerk dash treasurer, so it's combined.
I mean, right now it says city clerk and collector.
Or treasurer collector, so there is no one position, but it's just the city clerk. It is a two position person.
It is today, but that could be moved later. The clerk duties could be pulled off of this, so I'm in favor.
If you change the charter, correct, sir?
Yeah, I do like the changes in the charter where all the clerk language was removed. I think we should rename the collector to comptroller and then move the clerk duties underneath of the city manager just as they're clearly defined now.
Yeah.
And then the dynamics of what that looks like, that might be one person
Yeah.
today. The charter won't dictate that. The city manager and the commission will dictate. The charter position will be the comptroller position.
Alright, so does anybody have any strong feelings one way or the other about renaming the other charter officer to comptroller, but leaving the substance of what they do the same, minus the clerk function goes under the city manager now? I think we're on the same page, okay.
I have a question. I know that there's public records and some of those are all legal requirements by statute, right? Does the statute require there to be a position of city clerk, or does it just say the city has to maintain those duties? Just have to have somebody.
It's the duties that need to be
Yeah.
complied with, not
Right.
necessarily.
It doesn't matter who,
Not the office.
It seems to be a tradition,
right?
historically, that the person who has this duty is called a clerk or city clerk, not just in Florida, but in the nation. But it's the duties that have to be complied with, and when you read the statutes about those duties, it doesn't use the word city clerk. It
Right, so
just says,
it could be
here-
multiple people in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
This-
here's duties.
Theoretically.
And it is, by practice, I mean, it is, it's not, poor Doreen is not the only one getting all of the records. She relies heavily on probably most of my team, I would imagine, and Nevin's team to provide that information.
The public records aspect that
Yeah.
requires that we appoint a custodian of records. And
Right.
this is usually the way you do it, it's the clerk that is, from a city standpoint, it's the clerk that acts as that. Or for the county commission, it is
Let's
the
do this in
clerk
two,
itself.
let's do this in two steps. The first step would be approving the language that's highlighted under the city clerk, and putting that under the manager. And then the next step would be to revise the other charter officer to city comptroller. Is that fair?
I have a question about because the word administrative direction does a lot of work in that sentence. And that's my only question there. It seems different than some of the other language we've used about shall be appointed by or things like that. I guess this is just requiring the creation of an office to fulfill that specific duty. That doesn't say, like what you just told me, that's not actually a requirement of any state statute.
Yeah, would it then be appointed by the city manager or hired by, I mean, or does that matter? Cause this is moving the clerk from an appointed position to fall under, a general employee.
So that's my question about what administrative direction kind of exactly entails.
So as this is written, it would be someone who's appointed by the city manager.
I would assume
That's
like
make it more complicated, but does it even need to be a defined position, or do we need to just take the substance of the role and wrap it up under, the enumerated responsibilities of the manager?
We don't have any other of the city manager's positions, well, police
Fire,
and
Yeah,
fire.
police and fire.
Well, and there's a reason why we are doing the police and fire, but if the state statute doesn't require it,
But you said you think it requires us to name a custodian. So
Oh, it
we
does
would
do
name
that, yeah, but that,
John, the city
It doesn't have to be in
manager.
the charter though.
no, it doesn't have to be in the charter.
Okay.
but are we just doing this because it will explain to the commission and to the public what we're doing with the city? Is that why we're doing this? That might be the reason why, but
Because it is a change.
I would,
It is a
I would,
change.
I would lean towards that, just like we kept fire and police in there,
Yep.
because to strike it through makes it sound like we don't have police anymore.
Right.
And so.
Okay.
I think there's also an argument that we're overthinking this.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That's why you're
Um,
much better attorney than I. Close enough, let's go.
That is not true. My name's not on the building, that's the.
Good, okay.
So I
Well,
don't
in that
think,
case,
I don't think we're.
awesome, they leak and they, wow, money pit.
It doesn't feel like we're redoing the org structure of, right, we're just clearly defining what the charter positions are. right? And then let Jonathan worry about if there's a city clerk or whatever you wanna name it, whatever it's called. The big change is the finance side. They didn't really talk much about the clerk duties at all, it was the finance side.
Yeah.
And the finance officer being clear, we're just gonna name it the comptroller. Like the duties as they shift don't have to be something big up here, let's just kind of keep it where it is. And just be clear about the new duties of the comptroller. The charter position.
Right, but that's what the problem, that's what this is doing though.
I would strike it.
This is making him, yeah. Alright.
He's already accountable to it.
Oh, okay.
The dealings of the city.
But I think that there might be another reason for us to do that, which is so that it doesn't act like we're just disappearing.
Get rid of a clerk.
Sometimes, that's.
So Ron, what's your motion?
Motion man.
Well, you don't even have it listed as a section, but I approve the new language for the duties of the city clerk to be added to the charter and removed from the city clerk and collector section.
Okay, is there a second? I second? I can second, right?
Yes, you can second, you cannot make motions.
If we can just get something other than, I don't like the administrative direction, I know I'm overthinking it. It concerns me,
It's a lot, it's in a lot of our job descriptions.
okay, maybe that's where it's from.
Yeah, so it could be, you could say administrative oversight or shall be directly employed by.
Pleasure of. Alright, well then that explains, that was what I needed, alright, I second that motion. Even though you seconded it already.
Well, not to be too much of a stickler, so Ron's motion was verbatim.
Yeah.
So are you
Yeah.
okay with that, or you want the?
I, as long as this, cause that clearly to me means something that I'm not understanding the administrative direction. If there's somewhere else where we can go to that explanation, then that's fine.
Okay.
I'm
So
okay.
you're okay with it?
I'm okay.
Okay, all right, well then, we'll stick with my second, any other debate?
I just don't think we have any other language in the charter about any of the other department heads.
Yeah.
There's no other language in there, why would city clerk be specific language? I
We
understand
have
removing
police and
it.
fire, I believe.
But we,
Well, I'm talking about the other departments, there's what, 15 departments?
My counter to that would be, if it wasn't already in the charter, I would agree with you, I wouldn't add it in there, but to remove confusion for the citizens that read it, to somehow we got rid of the function of saving
We got
records
rid of the city clerk.
yeah, we got rid of the clerk, and we're not keeping records anymore. Purely, it's purely a political marketing thing for me.
That is I think this is a cosmetic change.
Yeah, that's better way to
Mr. Chairman, as well, this is one of those changes, you're denoting the change in time, but I would imagine the next charter review committee would be like, well, that's change is already made, let's delete that.
So, what are those people doing?
I can step down.
Any other debate?
Well, let's change it back.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then how about name of the third charter officer position? Comptroller?
That works for me.
I Googled that word, Mr. Chairman, it's a comptroller is a high-level executive or official acting as the chief financial officer for government bodies, nonprofits or companies. So,
Who motioned that?
Brandon did.
I can't.
I was just
I'll make that
making sure we
motion.
voted, okay, who's second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey, make a good time today.
Taxation,
I vote that we don't have any.
Do you agree we weren't gonna make any changes to this?
that's page 28, just for the record.
I think the idea was that we leave 148 untouched at the recommendation of council, and then 149 through 54 be struck.
So I'll make that motion that we leave section 148 as is, and then we strike based off of the editor's notes or home rule powers, everything that doesn't need to be included anymore.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any other debate? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's for the entire article.
That was to keep 148 as written and then strike the rest of the article. Yeah. We have bonds on here again?
Bonds, I think, have been completely removed as well.
I know that was, I'm pretty sure that was the spirit of what we were talking about, was that virtually all of the bond issuance is governed by statute.
Constitution statute, yeah.
So are we considering removing Article 16 in its entirety?
I'll make a motion that we remove Article 16.
Is there a second?
There you go.
Any other discussion or debate? All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, finance generally. Section of that.
14, page 26.
So the thing that came up at the virtual workshop, and I dropped the ball on this because Josh did send me language, and I can send it to you guys. It was very loose language on like a mandate for fiscal accountability that mirrored an existing ordinance. Maybe you guys already know this, so stop me if you do. And obviously staff chime in if I'm misrepresenting this, but currently there's nothing in place outside of the statute that puts any sort of fiscal constraints other than bonds. Just, you know what I'm saying? All right. There is an ordinance that requires that the city maintain effectively working capital or reserves or 16 point something percent, which represents 2 months of operating expenses. The city's been below that number for basically since the hurricane. And there's no teeth to that requirement. It's just a self-imposed, curfew, and if you stay late, you just break your own curfew and off you go.
It's a resolution and it says in there that we would target to maintain a level. So it doesn't say it must be this or it has to be this, it is, and it establishes it for the general fund and then the other utilities and solid waste marina funds. But it's a resolution that was a fund balance policy that was established by the city commission and can be changed to put teeth in it if need be, or it could be an ordinance if.
I'm for, I don't wanna strong arm and handicap, right? If there's a hurricane, then the budget has to change, right? The percentage of revenue has to shift. I'm fine taking money out of the reserves when there's a natural disaster. I think we have to be. I think the conversation the resolution came from, we weren't talking about what that number needed to be for the first 5 years post-hurricane. I think if we put anything in the charter that dictates it, it shouldn't be a number, it should be that there is a percentage set year over year by the city manager and it's signed off by the city commission. That way there's a discussion, it's an intentional discussion. I don't think we mandate what that percentage should be, but I think that we should mandate that discussion does happen once a year.
If I could add to that happens annually during the budget process as well. So that's already happening. So
But does it?
Yeah, because they're approving revenues and expenditures, and then they'll see what like use of reserves if it's used, or they'll see contributions to reserves because we've spent less than what our revenues are. So it's happening at reserve time, and it's happening as we close the fiscal year out, because we'll show how much we spent to budget, and whatever we underspend, that goes to reserves as well. So, I mean, it's happening multiple times a year already. And it is one of as long as I've been here, that conversation happens multiple times annually, because we've funded recurring expenses to reserves for a long time. It's not just the prior commission, it was the commission under Greg Brudnicki with Commissioner Katie there still. So I mean, those conversations are happening, and they have to happen as part of the budget process.
I just remember being at the commission meeting when this got brought up about a year ago, where the commission, and maybe this was a weakness in our current financial reporting structure, the commission said, what's the percentage that we should be managing to? Right? Nobody knew. And the city clerk came back and she said, I'm gonna look that up for you. And she came back with a state average.
It was our policy, when it was initially adopted, was 30% for a disaster emergency reserve and 20% for an unassigned reserve. So it was essentially 50% for the general fund. And then before the hurricane, the commission at that time lowered that unassigned from 20 to 10. So then it was 40%. And then now, this commission, I don't think they've officially changed it to 16, but they've discussed that they're okay with just getting to that 16%, which is what GFOA, best practice would be.
And I would tell you for years, the city's taken heat because we're sitting on a quote unquote pile of money. Because you think like 40% of your operating is a lot of money to just be sitting in the bank.
And it's 40% of your budgeted operating expenditures. Sorry, Jared, I just wanted to add that. It's not, 40%, that would be for your general fund, and then utilities fund would be separate, solid waste fund would be separate. So, each one has their own reserve.
But I will say having that, especially, and I know we're not really thinking utilities here, but both for the general fund and for utilities after Hurricane Michael, like I remember we stroked a check for $8 million for emergency utility work. And it got our utilities turned back on and toilets flushing and water running within 3 weeks. And we were able to bring thousands of utility workers from across the state here to help. And the same thing happened with our general fund reserves. I mean, that's what really got the debris off the road, even though it took 2.5 years to finish that out. Without that flexibility to do that during a disaster or other event that we don't know about, that would have been very difficult. But we would have had to gone out and seek a bond or a loan to do that.
And we did. We had to do a loan as well,
I have a hard time knowing where to even start here because with all of the 3 questions, and I don't even know who's gonna be able to answer these. What was the general fiscal position of the city before the hurricane hit? Then is there a plan to replenish whatever those reserves, for lack of a better word, are? And then also with all these hurricane related expenditures and things like that, is there any additional money coming from county, state, federal, whoever, where else? It's like, well, listen, just eventually we're gonna get reimbursed for this stuff, or was this just the cost of hurricane hitting the area?
I can answer that generally, and Brandy's probably got a lot more detail, but we do have things that we're still waiting and are outstanding on reserves, on our reimbursements. So our private property debris removal program, there's still some argument about that. It's roughly $1.5 million. That's sitting in short-term debt right now. We have some non-reimbursable expenses sitting in short-term debt for A&E planning and a lot of other post-disaster stuff. The position of the city prior to Hurricane Michael, we funded a little bit of stuff out of reserves, more capital expenditures. There might have been a couple of recurring revenue things. But really what started this reserves, like funding things from reserves journey, was in 2017. The commission authorized 17 additional police officers, and we funded 17 of those out of reserves. And again, it's because the commission was taking a lot of heat about you're sitting on a big pile of money and your reserves, you shouldn't have that much. So they made that conscious decision. We were 10 short at that time, officers, by the way. So we went from 10 short to 27 short, and then it took a year to recruit and retain all those folks.
But go back to the question, is there some money coming in? It's like, I know we're short on reserves, but we anticipate getting this money coming in.
I would say
and we'll
yes, because we went from $2 million in reserves last year, and when we closed the fiscal year out, we're at $5 million now.
A lot of the projections in the monthly financial report for reserves is based on us spending every dime that is, allocated in the budget. And that's why, it kind of looks worse than when the audit comes through. We're looking more like 5 million. So it's a better scenario because the reality is we do not spend every dime that we have budgeted to spend, thankfully. And we usually bring in more revenue than we budget because we budget conservatively. But prior to the hurricane in general, I mean, we were over that 40% number that I talk about. We would talk about it every year in our budget report. There was a whole section on reserves, so I can go back and show you all that. But the plan to replenish the reserves, that was discussed in the budgets following the hurricane. But at that point, our revenues had went down, and we were right in the middle of all these grants and FEMA projects, and so and we had these loans too, so our financial position looked really good, but once we had to pay off those loans, get new get a new loan for the $150 million line for all the projects. The interest expense on those loans is $8.7 million. So that was a new expense added to us that we hadn't previously had. And that's what's really, been a burden for us. Now, I know, Jonathan, you can speak to this. I know you've talked to Congressman Dunn's office, I don't know how many times, about the interest getting reimbursed for our interest expense. And that would be huge, but I think we spent a total of like $7 or $8 million on interest the first few years after Hurricane Michael, just so we could pay all of our debris removal invoices. And that was, I don't know, is that still a possibility?
It is still a possibility, so.
But
we'll
we were
look into
being told that that would be reimbursed to us, so that was part of our plan to replenish reserves, was to get some of that interest expense back.
So, Mike, this is gonna be very unique, cause you speak enough condo to help me out here. When I hear the word, I understand, like, when there's a revenue bond, that money's tied up, I get all that. When I hear reserves, is there anything in the statute that says that a reserve is bound in any kind of, or is it just a fancy savings account?
It's a fancy savings account, I
Okay,
think would be the best way to describe it,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, there's not a,
And there's
she doesn't have
no,
an account that she's putting money into that says,
and there's no statutory requirement that says you gotta save up money for your infrastructure or your asset or any of that type of stuff, like my condo buildings
I
do.
mean, utilities fund is a requirement for R&R, renewal and replacement, and for the utilities fund, and for our bonds for that too, I know
but that's
that,
bond, yeah.
that's,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's the GFOA, the best practices standard, and typically, I think you get gold stars for that, for the city, so I don't know that it's you're concerned about handcuffing the future commission because we don't know what the, cause remember, that's what your charter is gonna be, is a handcuff. So be mindful of that.
And the truth is, I mean, we're probably, as a city right now, coming up on 8 years out, we're probably only halfway through our recovery. I think we need to be mindful of that.
Would it be easier for you to manage, since you manage the budget, right? You set the budget,
Yep.
you propose it, would it be easier for you to manage if the commission, my thought process is the commission is too involved in financials as it is. They're super curious, like they're held accountable. They think that they are held accountable to how we spend the money. They sign off on the budget and it's your job to execute, right? But would it help you in your role if by resolution or by charter that percentage of funds is clear year over year? If the commission's going to drive, we are okay with 16%, we're okay with 40%, but that be the number and it has to be agreed upon by the commission. Should that be a charter driven, not capping it, but the mandated review of, we all agree with what this looks like?
I would say that maintaining maximum flexibility for future city leaders is prudent.
I would say if this commission, or if you guys, I hear Commissioner Street talking about not having any teeth. Well, it's currently a policy that could be revised if you wanted to put some teeth in it, but it is very much a target, policy that we always strive, of course, we strive to get there, but
Yeah.
we're not out of the hole yet to be able to start really putting some money towards reserves.
And I'll be honest, I mean, this is the challenge, and I understand the challenge, but any of the commissioners right now could be like, you know what? I want us to be back at, 16% ASAP, so Jonathan, Brandy, Jared, whatever you have to do in the next year, even if it means reducing services, go ahead and do that. I mean, they could make that motion right now and give us that direction, but I know for a fact that they also want to be able to text us, at 9:00 on a Saturday morning, be like, hey, someone in my district has a massive leak, can you guys get someone to go handle it? And we're able to do that. So it's to that point where like we as a city are still in a very fragile and precarious situation right now, because again, we're probably not even halfway through our recovery yet. And so that's why I say maximizing flexibility I think is wise, because I would love to see a little bit more of a savings account, but I also know the expectations of the citizens and businesses as we continue to recover. Some areas we're doing full-blown surgery, but in other areas, we're still kind of doing sutures and Band-Aids. And we need to be able to keep doing that until we find other funding sources to completely rebuild the infrastructure that's needed that was neglected for 40 years.
So I will say, there was a lot of discussion in the virtual workshop about, hey, if this shouldn't be in the charter, if it should be more policy driven. To me, and I've worked for 3 city managers now, and it does provide a lot of flexibility, and it does solve a lot of problems for our elected officials, being able to be flexible in that vein. Like if I knew I needed, let's say I had a critical piece of equipment fail at fire or police, and I needed to be able to replace that equipment, and otherwise I would not be able to provide the level of protection that we're currently providing, then I could dip into that account, and if it put me 0.5% under whatever minimum, and then it would not allow me to unless we did, I don't know what the legal remedy was if we broke that rule in the charter. That's one of my biggest fears.
I think from
Good point.
I mean,
Mike said, good point, Jerry.
that's two today.
And say out loud.
I think that's great practice and it gives you the flexibility, but when you're $4 million in the hole, should you be leveraging that flexibility or should there be a handicap?
So I would say we've gotten, our commissioners, regardless of any policy, has said, we need to see $4.5 million reduced in spending. And so they've said, shrink government or find creative ways to make this work. Because we know that interest payment that Brandy mentioned, that's gonna come off when we pay that loan off. But we anticipate some long-term debt that we'll have to make an annual debt service payment to. And so doing this exercise this year, when we pay that loan off in 27, will make 28 easier. So I think we're experiencing a temporary problem in cash flow because of the interest expense.
So can I ask the board or something? So I don't think there's gonna be any argument that all of this stuff is great policy. Like, we need to be saving money and on and on and on. I'm curious from the 3 of you guys, are y'all in the camp of great policy, absolutely should do it, doesn't belong in the charter, I still need more information because it might belong in the charter, or we definitely need something in the charter and we need to work on this? I think those are gonna be the 3 camps. Or where are you guys?
Two things. I think, policy and political, is something they've gotta go discuss with the public. I think belongs in the charter. Other thing too, I wanna take us back in the way back
Sorry,
machine.
you said you don't think it belongs in
It
the charter?
doesn't belong in the
Okay.
charter.
Okay, fair enough.
Take us back in the way back machine when we had the League of Cities presentation, one of the things he warned us about, and he said, was that cities around the state have gotten themselves into trouble when they get a little too creative and tie the hands of future commissions. I think that's the problem with this. I think it ties the hands of future commissions. We don't know what they're gonna be facing. Better for them to make that decision on their own. That's,
Yeah, if they all had 10-year terms and they were
Yeah.
all they ran consecutively, not a problem.
Brandon?
they might be.
Well,
I tend to agree with what JP's saying, not to, I feel like this is city manager responsibility to make sure that the budget is balanced, and that's a non-negotiable. But the charter's here to protect the city. Should there be a standard that we have to hit? And I don't know if it's clearly defined, and right now we're floating 2 years where there's somewhat of a deficit, right? Regardless of why, interest charges or whatever. Should there be a standard that protects the integrity of our city finances where we do not?
So are you in the camp of I don't know yet?
I don't know yet.
Okay, so yeah, that's okay.
100%.
Ron?
I'm in the camp of it should not be in the charter. I hate to have a story about everything, but if you have an organization like where I used to serve that is self-insured, and your
Claims.
Lords of London or whatever is your secondary, they go up, you gotta have millions of dollars right now.
And we have.
And if we tied somebody's hands in a charter, then you say, okay, sorry, we can't offer group insurance. I mean, that's
Ron just-
very, very reasonable, could happen.
or you take a lot more risk on your property.
Yeah,
We have had that with our health insurance, we're self-insured and our claims went way up in our reinsurance on that. We had to go to the commission and get a budget amendment out of reserves to help.
so I mean, tying the hands is real serious when it handcuffs, really doesn't handcuff the commission. The budget is passed, it handcuffs these people in the room.
Yeah, I'm tend to be in the same camp where it's obviously sound fiscal policy needs to be done,
Yeah.
all that good stuff, like save up money, on and on and on. When I initially got asked to be on this, and I was thinking about, because I'm gonna have this community association hat where it's like you save up money for your roof and your painting and it's legislated and you have to do it and it makes perfect sense. And then I just had a real long conversation with Josh and it was just like, well, municipal finances are just a very, very different animal. And there's all sorts of buckets of money that are sloshing around out there. And yes, we have this $120 million budget and a ton of that comes from the state. It's just not the same. And I go back, I think I say this every meeting, this just kind of seems like a problem looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem. And then also just, we're in such an atypical environment, even though the hurricane in some ways feels like it was a long time ago, we're still obviously, as you said, Jonathan, like halfway through it. So to kind of even try to craft something right now would have to be so intricate and so, I don't know, we have to make so many assumptions and make it forward, it's just be so challenging to do. Commission can always do it when it hits their level, but I'm just not.
Well, and see, why put it in the charter when you know emergency's gonna come one day? The commission has to vote by ordinance or whatever to amend the charter to do, why go through all
That's
that
what I'm saying.
motion?
It'd have to be something that's like, well, not right now, but in 4 years, but then if an emergency happens and you can, it would just it'd be
Yeah.
a super interesting exercise, but it's just kind of, yeah, okay. So then,
It's another reason that the CFO ought to work for the city manager, but that's another conversation for another day.
don't wanna go back to that.
I'll make a motion that we scratch general finance from the charter.
I don't remember what was.
I think there might be.
There's
There's only
section one
section
thirty-six
136
has
is
something, and I don't
the
know if it needs to be there or not. Cause there's an edit note after 136, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks like it's
Estimate of the expenditures and revenues of the city for the ensuing year.
that already happens with the
If
budget.
anything's in the charter, that should be in the charter, that the city manager has to have a budget every year.
Can we-
Come on.
It's
Isn't that
it's a
in the
state
city?
statute requirement, we're required to
Maybe
have
that's
it.
what the editor note means.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And if so, can we just move that as part of the city manager
Right,
duties,
Sure, I think it might be in there already.
I think it's in there.
right? There's no, why have a whole. Pain points.
So did we have a motion to remove article, what is that, 14? Do we have a motion?
But then move section 136 to the city manager.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
So I'll amend my motion to move that under the city manager and then strike section 14. Okay. Article 14.
Did we have a second? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Wait, I don't.
I
think we have two motions.
That's
the problem.
He
I
motioned.
seconded his
He
motion.
motioned.
Okay, so I second that.
Okay.
Okay, and then JP second. So, all right, debate. So the only discussion item I would have, this is purely a Scrivener's thing, is just make the verbiage, if we move it under, whatever, number 10, just make it line up with the other duties of city, like, we don't say the city manager shall, and then the city manager shall like twice, just make it flip, add a verb in there, and then you'll be good, yeah, otherwise I'm fine. Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Good ground.
I think staff might be a little grateful for that one.
Well, in that case.
Never mind.
That's the end of our agenda. Now, can I add one more thing about stuff that's missing?
Yeah.
Okay, now I will, and this is, I can give this to you, Mike, and I'm just gonna float these things out here, and I'll fully acknowledge, this is purely what Claude gave me when I searched what's in Tallahassee, Panama City, the model charter, Pensacola, and the beach that Panama City's charter doesn't have. And it kind of spit out a few things, and some of this stuff was just like, and I'm just gonna spitball these, and you tell me if these are things like worth discussing, but does the charter need to have its own amendment procedure in there? And also, should there be a ability for citizens to initiate charter amendments? They talked about other charters have conflict of interest provisions and the city's doesn't. Had a budget process framework, which I think we've addressed. it said that some of the other charters have an independent audit mandate. There was another one for intergovernmental relations clause, that they're allowed to work with other governments, and then just like a little liberal powers and construction clause. I don't know whether those are things to.
Quickly, most of those things you just referred to have probably all been replaced by state statutes. Claude may have just been pulling it out.
Yeah, no,
of the
for sure.
fact that it was there. For instance, ethics, that's one, chapter 112. What were some of the other ones that you mentioned? Most of those sounded
Like a
they-
citizens initiative for a charter
I
amendment?
think the amendment procedure is
That
something.
would be one that you would need to include. I'm pretty sure, yes, I don't think that's provided.
Would there be any, so just y'all think about that for the next one, if that's
Yeah.
maybe where we're thinking it. Then I know there's a minimum standard for conflicts of interest, but I don't know whether we'd want to add that or beef that up in any way if we could, or not.
Probably preempted by statute
Oh, entirely?
under 112.
Okay.
But that's a bite from the hip.
And there's already an independent audit mandate?
Yeah, you've got to have an audit every year. So.
I mean, some of the other things that spit out, recalls, which we've already talked about, that's
That's
governed by statute. It suggested term limits, which we intentionally don't have. Yeah, that was really it, so.
Can we get, what is the current amendment procedure? Is that somewhere?
For the charter?
Yeah.
You got to put it before the voters, and that's the.
Right, but the
Is that
commission
by
can
statute
do it,
though?
or it has to be a review, right, this commission can just,
Yeah, the commission would be the one that has to put it on the ballot.
okay.
But you're not required to have a charter review.
No, you're not
board
required to do
about
this
that.
at all. No, the
No, the
commission.
question, does the statute says every city shall have a charter,
Correct,
and then it says the citizens shall vote on the charter, right?
right?
Okay.
But
But then absent that, it's up to the commission to even ask the
because then you go to
citizens.
the election standards and you have to, the
Yeah.
commission has to put it on the ballot and those kind of things. So it's really up to so if you're thinking about a citizens initiative.
No, my question is there anywhere where I can look up something that says how to amend the charter?
This is how you amend the
Is
charter.
there an ordinance? Is there anything? Is it codified
It's gonna,
anywhere?
I'll have to find it, but it's gonna be in the election statutes, I believe. It's gonna be in like in chapter 100 or something.
In the, of the Florida, of the state
Yeah,
statute?
of the state
Interesting.
statute, yeah. It's gonna tell you that you've got to put it on the ballot, at the time frame that you do it by and all those kind of things.
Which is interesting. They also tell you, you have to have an audit for your independent audit. You have to have an audit selection committee. And I think you gotta do it every 3 years, and it tells you who all could be on it, and it's very specific for your audit.
Yeah.
In statute.
Ridiculous.
But they don't tell you about how you do your charter.
Yeah, I'm just mulling over if there's value in even having a article, whatever amendment, and it just says this can be amended pursuant to whatever statute. Not necessary.
Right.
But it doesn't make it cleaner and easier. Oh, cool, here's, it's just a more
No, it's
comprehensive document, I don't know.
It's a,
Same thing with the
it's a
audit.
guide to it,
Mhm.
you know. It's-
Well, y'all think about that for the next meeting, something we can do.
Mr. Chairman, what do we have left? What's our next meeting gonna be like?
Good question. We still have the
May
compensation
28th, I
issue.
know that, May 28th.
Well, and in consideration of everything that, but
Do we wanna re-entertain that supermajority thing? The
Yeah,
commission
That's
seemed,
where I was
Well, that's
going
what I'm
about
saying.
this. We've got some cleanup work that we might have to do.
and it's part of my question of, do we need to have another meeting in between because of everything that they brought up during their
I mean,
workshop and the time?
I don't wanna keep people here for sport, but I have a calendar until 2. If there's things right now, or do you wanna just sit, Ron, either way, or if you got a hard hour?
I need to be out here by.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
same camp.
The agenda, I would like to, that was discussed quite a bit too, the
Yes,
supermajority, the agenda.
and the gender neutral pronouns.
And
I think they just said strike the language on just say it's modernized. They didn't want it to go, maybe not get adopted because the word gender neutral is in there or something.
Yes.
I think you had just put it up there as a reminder that we're going to change the pronouns, right?
Yeah.
They completely overanalyzed
But
that.
in between now and the
And they
next
didn't
meeting,
give it-
Privacy.
And also the
You can
term,
tell.
the mayor's term,
Yeah, the 2 versus 4
There's some
is
discussion
still.
about that, yes.
I did share right before this meeting, I sent 2 articles, and I get like 4 or 5 email distribution list every day from stuff around Florida. And it was a couple of cities recently made the vote to go from 2 year to 4 years. And then also to no, sorry, they're putting 2 to 4 years or something on the ballot, and they voted to move the elections to August and November, so of the gubernatorial and presidential years.
So let's,
Yeah.
I'm down to discuss any of these. Can we just inventory what we have? We have agenda, supermajority, mayor term length. What else was there?
I think the clerk, but I think we've handled that
Yeah.
discussion, right, by not, so that was the other,
We still have commissioner pay. That's what I wrote. Terms, agenda, supermajority. That's what I wrote at the end of the thing.
Just the finance portion, but I think we figured that out too.
One of those is pretty easy. I think it's clear I'm not getting a fourth amendment to the charter, which is fine.
Well, yeah, let's address, do you mind addressing that first? The supermajority? Do we want to revisit, or can we revisit that?
Mike, you need to do these
I have
next
two
time.
trains of thought with stuff, you know, the commission tasked us to revise the charter and make recommendations to them. So if we feel strongly as a committee in a position, we ought to move it forward to the commission, and if they don't feel strongly, let them hash it out themselves. I mean, that's one take that I have. They task us with reviewing, we're reviewing, and let's just pick that one, if we are strong as a committee of the supermajority, let them decide that in a public meeting.
I agree with you 100%, except for I'm not strong on the supermajority. I am strong on the agenda issue.
Okay, well, agenda,
Yeah.
whatever, pick one, it doesn't matter, I don't want the work that we've done, because we've been, as 5 members, pretty strong on everything that we've recommended. And while when town meeting, we get their ideas, that's fine, but they task us for a job, we do the job and hand it to them. Yeah, they could throw up the whole thing out, not do a thing, they could. That's doubtful, but they could. So I mean, that's one position, we do our work, hand it to them and let them hash it out.
We also have the opportunity to, however it makes its way to the agenda or to the ballot is their responsibility. Whether they piece portions of it out and they put on there the mayor term. What does the public think the mayor term should be?
Absolutely like
And
that.
then they take it off, right? They could piece out portions of it. I think we all want it to go holistically. I think that's why we're getting their feedback, right? I also saw that they weren't exactly as prepared, and like when they brought up the police and the fire, like they didn't
They had
know
no
the
idea.
decisions that we all talked about, we roundtabled it. So I'm with you on, if maybe we take some time to educate, we do that maybe in another workshop on pushing some stuff forward. I mean, it's not gonna be out on one side, but
And the other thing I said at the workshop, and I think I said it when we started, whatever goes to the commission, and the commission and staff have to word it for a referendum so the voters understand it. That's really not our job maybe, but we've got to make sure that what we want can be simply identified for the next steps.
so my perception, my take was going back to what the assistant city manager said down there was the autonomy. Should we put language in there that says supermajority when the commission at the time, does it require a supermajority to remove the city manager? Should it? Like, it's almost like we're handicapping them. And I remember the conversation, and Cecile drove a lot of it, was this should be a position that's really hard. We are a city manager structure, right? If they make the commitment to hire him and he's performing, it shouldn't be personal or political, it should be performance driven.
That's correct.
Right, but do we put language in the charter to safeguard that, or do we leave it open-ended where it's a bit more flexible? We're tasked to protect the integrity of the city. I would am inclined to the supermajority. If they made a decision to hire, they should have made the right decision to hire. That's all procedural. That's all policy focused, however they got there. If he's performing the duties of his role, there's not an opportunity to put the city at risk of moving him out, moving somebody else in. Like, it should be a supermajority, and it can't be a political, not that position.
Might I add to that too? It's all how about, like when in a city manager world, a lot of those protections are all about how you negotiate your contract. So your contract could require a supermajority. I mean,
From a removal perspective?
yeah,
So let's do this, just to kind of keep order here. Does anybody even have a desire to revisit this language? We have a living document, it can be revisited, but we do also, there's gotta be some level of, we voted on something, are we even gonna bring it back up again?
Yeah, I think we should take the concerns of the commission seriously and revisit some of those topics that they, especially some of the flags that were planted, where they're saying, you know, well, hard no about this, or something we need to consider. Again, if we still feel strongly about it, I understand. But I think we do need to revisit their concerns.
So if let's just stay on the supermajority thing, do you wanna make a motion to either, do you have suggested language, or?
I think we need to return to the status quo after their considerations of the city commission.
So your motion would be just remove the revisions entirely and go back to the prior provision?
Well, we have to go back to their whole due process extra language, right, with the hearing nonsense. I think we can, I'm still in favor of striking that, but I do think just the removal portion should just be a simple majority.
Do we have time that once we've done our work as a charter to present it to the commission in a workshop before they actually vote on anything and rehash I mean, it may take more than an hour to do it. But to put the document we come up with to them in advance, let them read it. You know, if they have heartburn, I mean, workshop, you can't vote, but we would have a flavor for what they wanted.
Because I do think that some of the questions that they were bringing up during that workshop, we answered.
Yeah.
And because I understand that you read it.
You didn't answer any.
I didn't. That's why I'm not chair with the vice chair. Brandon did a great job.
He did a great job.
He did a great job of answering all of the questions.
Brendan and I are the only ones that spoke. Yeah.
We did a great job.
Or change it beforehand.
It's in the 20s.
I don't know, Mr. Chair.
So I think you can, the short answer is yes. I think there's also a question of how do you run that? I think it's gonna be, spoiler alert. I think you treat it as you give them something in writing, and I think we try to draft it together. And I don't mind taking the first shot at it and then circulating it to everybody and make sure that it reflects everybody's voice, and then give it to them a couple weeks in advance. And it's I don't want to say it's gonna be 100 pages, but it'll be, here's what we did, here's why we didn't put this stuff in here and the logic behind it. And I'm kind of pulling on sort of some of the legal stuff, like when you have like an appellate order, the appellate judges all circulate it and they all look at it and they go, that's cool. And then you even have dissents and the dissent looks at it, and it's a lot of work, but I don't mind. We can put something together and give them the chance to read it. Go from there. Yeah.
I just get to the point when you form a committee to do a task, to usurp that authority, if you will, beforehand, what's the point? Why didn't they just take the charter and do it themselves?
The only, your timing requirement, the only thing you've got to worry about is that we have to have this to the ballot if it's gonna be on the November general election by the end of whatever the primary week is, which John and I are just debating. It's August 20th, 24th, somewhere in that time frame. Is when that has to be approved and sent to the supervisor of elections in order to get on the general election for November. So back up from there, your time frame.
Do employment contracts have a termination clause?
Yeah.
All of them do, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you get negotiated, but yes, my experience, I've negotiated several, not just in this city, but in others, and they typically have a for cause and a convenience provision, right?
So we're talking three charter positions, 3 employment contracts per se, that the city approves, the city commission hires, they agree upon that contract. Then I would move to strike the termination language from the charter. If it's gonna be in an employment contract anyhow, and the city commission approves that and signs off on that, whether that commission changes or not, that contract's still valid, they've entered into an employment contract. Correct? I mean, I'm sure 60 years ago that those didn't exist. It was a handshake deal.
So it was whatever happened that day you showed up.
It's a trial, it's a 60-day trial, right?
So just procedurally, do you have a motion anymore? You started one and then we clarified it.
In terms of making a motion, I don't know that we're ready to.
Well, you kind of sound like you did.
Yeah.
You were You were
Yeah,
close to
he-
making a
he
motion.
wanted
I was
to make a
close,
motion,
yes.
but I do have a question, cause none of these items are on the agenda for today, so can we still discuss and vote on them? That's what I didn't know.
It's a publicly noticed meeting and
Yeah.
it's all
Thank
about
you,
the
thank
charter.
you. Okay,
So
I
I
just
think
wanted
they've
to
got
make
free
sure,
reign.
sorry.
Yep.
So do you want to make a motion?
Do y'all want me to make a motion?
You can't answer a question with another question. Only in law school.
There you go.
He's not a
I
lawyer.
would say it eliminates the conversation and, yeah, I'm probably eliminating, not problem solving, right? If we know we have to fix that language in there anyhow, if it's gone and it's solved by an employment contract, then the language isn't charter specific. I'd say let the employment contracts carry forward.
And I'll show my hands here. I would love to see a motion that says the city manager shall be removable by the city commission, period. But I can't motion.
I like that. See, that's why you need to just frame my mind.
But all the charter positions are removable by the city commission.
But not the way we have it now.
Not the way we changed it. Mr. changed Chairman,
It's
something.
removable just by supermajority.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you could turn over the remaining moderating of this particular issue to Brandon as vice chair, and you could then
Yeah,
make a
but I-
motion. Okay. I just wanted, if you wanna make a motion, you could do it that way, sir.
Fair point.
I think we just keep it simple. I will make a motion that we adopt that language that all charter positions are removable by the city commission.
So to revise whatever it is, section 10 now,
Absolutely.
put a period after city
And
commission.
add it into the other two charter positions.
Some of the language we use
It's
is
standardized.
some of the language we've used in the past and in job descriptions says serves at the pleasure of.
Article
the
7,
commission.
section 10, page 20.
So that way that implies they're hired and fired by.
I think it's simple.
I'll second Brandon's motion.
It means it defaults to a majority. They gotta do 3 out of 5.
Further debate? I mean, I hear everything.
Well, okay, I'm back to contract, I know. It's almost 2:00. Did I ask Nevin months ago, what trumps what, the charter or an employment contract? If I negotiate an employment contract with the majority, the supermajority of the commission has to remove me, does that take precedent, or does the charter take precedent that just says the commission can?
Well, now you've got a contract that the two parties agreed to, and so that's gonna be the basis
So
of
the
your.
employment contract
Yes.
wins.
You can.
In that scenario, you
In that
say,
scenario.
if you have in the charter that it requires the supermajority to remove it, then that effectively becomes a term of the contract.
Yep.
And
True.
and so there's your hand.
So if we put that language as the motion is, we just put that language in the charter, I negotiate whatever contract I think I can get out of the commission.
Yes.
Well, hold on, I'm not sure. I think you could make it more restrictive, not less. So if we had in here supermajority, but I negotiated as the city manager, it requires unanimous consent, that would be fine. But if I negotiated that the mayor could fire me on a whim, I don't think that the commission could approve that contract.
Cause it would violate.
Yeah,
Then
And hopefully the city attorney wouldn't approve it.
Well, we approve whatever the three of them vote for.
That's right.
In any instance, most instances. Give me your scenario.
Let's just make it easy. Let's just say it's you serve at the will of the commission. Normally it's a majority.
Yeah.
If there's a city manager contract that says, I've negotiated that I can't be fired unless it's unanimous consent,
Right,
that's valid.
correct.
If I negotiate a contract that says the mayor can hire and fire me, or fire me, the mayor can fire me unilaterally, I don't think they'd be allowed to do that. You couldn't circumvent the charter.
I think in that instance, what you just described where the mayor was able to do it, that's probably gonna be an unlawful delegation of authority.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the problem of that,
Yeah.
that scenario.
I think your point is valid, Mr. Chairman. It's that you can tighten it, but you can't loosen it more than the charter. I think
Yeah,
that's
right.
pretty fundamental in Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
If you choose as an organization to tighten it more, but some of the accepted standards, you can't get looser than that, so.
So if we put in here supermajority, then that will supersede employment contracts moving forward.
Unless you said unanimous in a contract.
Or you can negotiate a 5-year minimum term with a buyout, like some college football coach or
That should all
something,
be
or
in the employment
Yeah, there's no,
Now
that's,
you're talking.
that's limited,
Exactly.
that's limited by statute. so you have to be
Universities do
about-
not know how to write contracts, I will tell you that.
Yeah,
right now.
the statute does limitate severance packages and
Yeah.
and
I don't
payouts.
know. Okay.
So
Yeah, I agree, that part should be, but I think the removal thing needs to be a vote.
Alright, so we do have a motion to put a period after city commission that the city manager shall be removable by the city commission.
And what,
He said
just so I know,
all
what section
charter-
is that?
He said all charter positions.
Well, that was the conversation from the commission about trying to make the same
Yeah.
language for all.
I feel like the city attorney, that's already in there.
Well, the city attorney is actually gonna be governed by the Florida bar too. We're not allowed to have non-compete or provisions like that. If you don't like us as lawyers, you can get rid of us, so.
Either way, I
So if you're gonna do anything, make that unanimous
Yeah, the three.
vote.
Okay, that's fair. So that if the motion is that all charter officers shall serve at the pleasure of the commission,
All charter positions are removable by city commission.
Yeah.
So
Or
period-
serve at
Don't
the
we like
pleasure
to
of.
serve at the pleasure
You
of?
want
Serve
to
at the
change
pleasure
that, all
of,
charter
yeah.
positions serve at the pleasure
Pleasure.
of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
is there further debate? All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know if we have, do we wanna talk about anything else for 5 minutes?
I think we might wanna just set it for next time, or do we need another meeting is my question. Since we're running out of.
Let the commission, I mean,
Since
the
we're running out of time.
compensation out. Do we still have to circle back around to compensation?
Agenda, mayor term length and compensation.
Wait, what?
We didn't do anything
Agenda.
with compensation, did we?
No,
I'm
we're
saying-
tied on that.
We kicked that can, so.
So you have to have another meeting to discuss that anyway. That was
Yeah.
the,
There's one on, what'd you say, May
28th.
twenty-eighth?
Yeah, May 28th.
And June 25th.
That's it, right?
then you better.
I might be fixated on this, but with like 2 weeks ahead of the next meeting, can you guys tell us these are things that are not in the charter? And the answer may be no.
That what you just,
Yeah,
yeah,
but look, we've looked at these things and there's nothing that we've seen in any other charters that we think you guys should contemplate putting in here. And if the answer is no, great, or maybe, hey, there's a couple other things y'all may wanna debate, but give us like a week or so to look at it ahead of time.
Okay.
And I don't personally need like actual language or whatever, just like a topic with like a sentence afterwards, and then we
Okay.
can figure it out and give us some time to look at it ahead of time. So our next meeting is when?
May
May
28th.
28, 1 month. Actually, a little bit over a month.
So I know I'm gonna be redundant.
Brandon, do you want us to follow based on what you just, that list that you gave earlier as a guide for it, or do you want us to?
I can send you what I got for what it's worth. I mean, I
Yeah.
spit it in, I put it in, spit it out, and brought it with me, and I looked at it on the walk over here. So AI is great, but you gotta vet it.
Yeah.
I can send it to you if you wanna look at it from first principles, you can do that too.
Yeah, you're kind of asking us to go find all this kind of, what's a fad, sort of I mean, almost like what's the fad going in
What's
charter
hot?
review? What's the hot topic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
So-
wanna send you on some like Sisyphean task.
I got clerks, I don't want to do
But I would think whether it's, I mean, I don't know, I guess, you've done something with beach, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if the beach charter has some things, it's like, actually, they have a couple things in here, I don't expect to review every
Okay.
municipality's thing, but if there's just, most charters will have this or that, you don't really have anything for that.
We'll do kind of a Northwest Florida, similar size
Yeah, I mean, I really think
city kind of a review for
if
you.
it's a,
Didn't Lynn Haven recently update theirs?
They did.
But
They're doing it again.
They're doing it
Okay.
again, yeah.
They've done it, this would be
I
twice
I've
since the
got you,
hurricane.
I understand.
I'm not getting mad at you about
Yeah,
it.
no, I got the task.
Jonathan, I know I'm being redundant, remind me of dates starting backwards, this has to go to the supervisor when?
By the end of the week of the 17th of August. So the primary election is Tuesday, the 18th. So we want everything buttoned up that week. I wouldn't recommend,
August 24th
I
is the
would-
date.
oh, is it for sure?
Yes,
Okay.
that's from the
Okay,
supervisor's.
good. So that gives
text.
us the Monday after that, but
And we have a
still,
meeting when?
you have a meeting May 28th
And June 25th.
and June 25th. So the question I have is, one of you made a comment about having a in-person workshop after you guys kind of button everything up with the commission. So do we think, based on the schedule, Caroline and Brandy, are we going to wrap everything up at the May 28th meeting? If all goes as well as planned, I mean.
that's really up to them. I mean,
I think so.
But
Okay,
you
so
you also have the commissioner report too, so you'll need to have a meeting to approve a report at some point in time.
What do you mean?
Greg, I mean,
report
Greg,
of your
right, you were-
recommendations.
Yes, I think it's based on what you were saying earlier, sort of your appellate.
Like,
You
oh,
would-
you mean like something in writing?
Yeah, you've got to have something in writing back to the commission.
Do we-
And it could be as simple as just
gonna
the,
present
the charter,
Here's the new
yes.
version, here you go.
You could just-
that could be
you could-
it, that could be it, but you had a discussion about giving sort of a synopsis of it with the dissenting opinions and those kind of things.
Yeah, that's fine. I really don't think it's gonna be that hard.
If we do a workshop with them and then finalize a report pending the results of that workshop, we'll be looking at July for that, and then how long do y'all need to get it all?
Yeah, I was gonna say, from our perspective, we're gonna need some time in order to craft the ballot language. That's gonna be, depending on the amount of changes that ultimately come out. That can be a bit of a task, for us to meet the.
When does the commission meet for their workshops?
The virtual workshops are the first and third Mondays of every month, but the third Monday of May is getting canceled. We'll do the first Monday of May, May the 4th.
Do you think we'll be ready by the June 25th meeting and re-advertise that as a workshop between us and them for June 25?
You could do the May 28th meeting, and if you're not finished with these, because you really just have anything that y'all may want to add to the charter, and then these outstanding issues. May 28th, and if you want to have another meeting between there and June 25th, we could schedule one to be ready for a workshop.
Yeah, these last items are the ones wrapping up. These are gonna be the agenda for sure. I'm gonna go deeper on compensation.
And I really think that we ought to, as a committee, make those decisions by what we, and then present it. And then let them publicly debate why they don't or like it or not.
Just the 3 outstanding items, is that what you have?
I think so.
Really?
Term length, agenda, and commission pay.
That covers all the articles. There's nothing we're leaving out outside of.
I think we've done everything.
Yeah, are we missing anything?
If we find something that we really wanna put in.
We could take either the June 1st or June 15th workshop and make them in person, and y'all could join. If
Just
you
didn't
feel like
know
you're gonna,
they
if you're
would be
gonna be
ready.
buttoned up by May 28th.
Okay, let me ask a question. The one that we met downstairs, was that a workshop?
That was a town hall, Tony.
That was a town hall.
I
I don't
mean,
wanna do a town hall.
yeah, no, this would be a workshop now, yeah. So,
Would
and
you like to elaborate on the record? Why not?
Yeah.
No, cause every commission has 1 or 2 of those
I'm just
folks that
kidding.
are gonna
Yeah,
come,
I'm
so
just
no.
So, yeah, the town
Good
hall,
for 9.
yeah, the town hall is absolutely driven by the constituents.
Yes.
And a workshop is driven by staff and the elected
Okay.
officials.
All right.
And there's
Now we-
usually no audience participation
Not in a
those.
workshop, yeah, not in a
Okay.
workshop, so. If you wanted to, if you guys wanted to make sure you were buttoned up by June 1, I'm just looking at our calendar, there is the whole middle of the day, May 14th is wide open.
May 14th.
If you want,
You're
if you,
not gonna be ready by May 14th.
no. If the board, the charter board wanted to be 100% buttoned up and ready to start presenting by the end of May, and you're concerned that the 28th, if you can't get all done on the 28th, you could do the 14th and the 28th.
Oh, like to have another meeting.
Yeah, just to make sure that by May 28th, you guys do legitimately 100% finish your work. Or at least that's what I'm suggesting. It's an
Alright.
option if you guys would like.
Let's put all of our resources behind getting this thing done for our purposes on the 28th. Okay, we can see where we're at with that. The things that I have left over are agenda discussion, mayor term, compensation, some reference to missing components, whatever, anything else we wanna consider. And then if we can put on the agenda, just some catch-all comprehensive review of any other loose items, or make it sound better than that, but, and then I do very, very good with, due dates. So I will take the first stab at drafting something that explains what we've done by, and I'll send it out to the advisory board by Friday, May 8th. And then, there's gonna be some holes, cause there's some stuff to be filled to the side. And then, Mike, can you have our stuff by the 15th? That's a Friday, so it's about a little less than 2 weeks before our meeting on the 28th. And then, if you guys look at things and just take another glance at the charter and just see if there's something else somehow we've missed, we'll add that either expressly on the agenda or it could be in the catch-all, whatever else, okay? Is that fair?
And with your blessing, what I could do is also on the 28th, I can extend that to 3 p.m. and just to make sure we have like that extra hour, so we all plan for that a month in advance. Just to give a little bit of, just to make sure that we're not all crashing at 2 p.m. It's just a thought. I'd hate for us to get to like 1:55 and there'd be like 1 or 2 issues you guys are still working through. 2 hours can go by pretty fast.
Also, 2 hours is a lot of charter talk.
But y'all all love it so much.
They could do another meeting following.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, it's just there and everyone plans on it just in case.
Cool, so y'all make good
Thank you.
job today. Good job today.
Alright, so let's focus on trying to have this thing out the door on the 28th. Alright,
Awesome.
Motion to adjourn.
Ron motioned to adjourn, JP seconded.
Yep.
All in favor?
It's all done.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.